Six Nations 2025, folks, is just around the corner. The initial squads have been named. Some guys already seem like they're going to miss out with injuries. That's only going to change more as the tournament gets closer. But let's have a look at these squads. See the composition. How many of these guys are homegrown? How many guys are qualifying through family, like a parent or a grandparent? How many guys are residency qualified or qualifying via being born in a spot? And you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this is looking. The information comes from the America's Rugby News. Paul Tate prepared all this. So if you want to get straight down to business and get straight to the numbers, check the article down in the description. I'll link it there. Certainly got a lot more detail than we're going to go into here. Here we're mainly going to be looking at which guys are homegrown and who went through other systems. Because for me, that's the kind of most interesting stuff. And it can be a little bit of a hot button issue. For me, this is just one of many aspects of international rugby's kind of the management side of things. If you're a coach, you're a selector, you need to be looking at which guys are eligible. How many countries are they eligible for? Do you need to cap them? Is another country interested in capping them? Should you grab them before somebody else grabs them? It's just a part of the modern game. Start with England because England is pretty straightforward. They've got two guys who are not homegrown and they didn't go through the English system. That's Chandler Cunningham South. He is a product of the New Zealand system, and Harry Randall, who is a product of the Welsh system. Those guys are interesting because they were both born in England to English parents. But we're still calling them not homegrown because they didn't learn their rugby in England, if that makes sense. Cunningham South moved to New Zealand as a youngster with his folks, so could have played rugby for New Zealand, but we didn't pick him up. So now he's back in his homeland, the homeland of his parents, playing for England. And Harry Randall went through the Welsh system, represented Wales up until, I believe, under 18s level before he switched back to the home of his parents, England, and from under 20s went on to full England international from there. So England's pretty straightforward. There are other guys in the English squad who were born outside England but still are homegrown because they went through the English system. That's the likes of a Marcus Smith, of a Bevan Rodd. But yeah, pretty straightforward. England, 34 homegrown and 2 qualifying via their parents or being born there, whichever way you want to look at it. France, likewise, pretty straightforward. They have 3 guys who aren't homegrown. Thibaut Flamand, although born in France, grew up outside of France in Belgium and then partly in Argentina and then in England for a while. So he's not a product of the French system despite being born in France. Uini Antonio is a Kiwi who moved to France to play rugby. He went to Wesley College here in Auckland, which is the same school that Jonah Lomu went to, but he obviously plies his trade over in France. And then Emmanuel Meafu, also born here in Auckland in New Zealand, but moved to Australia, couldn't get a pro deal there, so ended up, again, moving to France to play his professional rugby. So 39 out of 42 are homegrown. You've got 2 guys on residency, that's Antonio and Meafu, and then 1 guy, a Frenchman being born in France, and Thibaut Flamand, who just happened to grow up outside of France. Ireland have got guys with both residency and family connection. You've got a South African connection with Rob Herring. He's got an Irish grandparent, but grew up in South Africa. You got Mac Hansen, who's got an Irish parent, but grew up in Australia. Played Aussie under-20s, played for the Brumbies. He's a real miss for the Aussie scouting. And then Finlay Bealham, Irish grandparent, but moved to Ireland to play rugby pretty young. I think in his late teens, so played Ireland under 20, so was clearly committed to Irish rugby from a pretty young age. And then you got the 3 guys who are from New Zealand, that's Gibson Park, Lowe and Arkey. All of those guys moved to Ireland to play rugby. So the breakdown, 30 guys homegrown out of 36. You got 3 on residency, 1 by a parent and 2 by grandparents. Again, there are guys in the Irish squad who weren't born in Ireland but did go through the Irish system, so are still homegrown. Like Sir Joe McCarthy, born in the US, but he's still homegrown because that's where he learned his rugby. Now, Wales seem to have a big English connection, which to me makes sense given the geography and the movement of people between Wales and England. And you can say the same with Scotland, who we'll get to later as well. But a bunch of these guys learned their trade in England. You got Henry Thomas, Freddie Thomas, Will Rowlands, both of them, Bevan, Tompkins and me, all with an English connection, and then Blair Murray with a New Zealand connection. None of these guys based on residency. Some of them have played rugby up to a decent level for the likes of England, like England under-20s for Freddie Thomas and Nick Tompkins. Actually playing for England for Henry Thomas. Blair Murray, I think, played New Zealand schools level, but 5 of them have got Welsh parents, 2 of them Welsh grandparents, and one in James Botham, just being born in Wales. Like his granddad, Ian Botham, is like an English cricketer, for goodness sake. But apparently James Botham grew up with a Welsh flag on his wall, so I guess was never in doubt to play for Wales. But that's Wales, 26 out of 34 homegrown. Italy is also an interesting one because you got guys from all over. You got Lamb, Allen, and Gallagher with an English connection. You got Capuozzo and Pedrello with a French connection. Negri with South Africa. Argentina produced Brex. Wales produced Varney. Vincent has been all over the shop. South Africa and the UAE. And then Australia for Monty Ioane. But Italy seems to keep tab on these guys from a pretty young age because Capuozzo, Sebastian, Varney, Vincent, all these guys played Italian under 20s. So they seem to be keeping tabs on these guys really early on. This is what I'm talking about kind of clever management to make sure you put them on the path to becoming a full Italian international. And barring Ioane, all these guys have got a family connection. Ioane is the only residency-based player in that Italian squad. So 21 out of 31 are homegrown. And as I said, all but Ioane have got the family connection with Italy, mostly parents. There's a few guys, Alan played Scotland under 20s. But, yeah, that's the Italian makeup. And then you get to Scotland. Scotland have also got a big English connection as well. They get a lot of stick for being a largely South African squad. But there's only 3 South Africans in the squad, and of those South Africans, only 2 of them are residency guys. That's Schoeman and Van der Merwe. Dylan Richardson is also South African, but with a Scottish parent, so he's got the family connection. The English connection's the massive one. Ashman, Hurd, Sykes, Bayliss, White, Hutchinson, and Jones, all going through the English system, but all with a parent or grandparent, barring Hugh Jones, who I think just happened to be born in Scotland at the time. Spent time in England, spent time in South Africa, so he's got connections all over the place as well. And then the Aussie connection with Tuipulotu and Dempsey, although Tuipulotu is now out, which is terrible news. And Dempsey, who's actually played for Australia in the past. But yeah, the Scottish connection with family is also pretty massive. You got 8 with grandparents, 2 with parents, and then Hugh Jones, who just qualifies by being born in Scotland to English parents. I believe he's also got a bit of a Welsh connection, obviously, with that name. And then 3 guys on residency. That's the likes of Schoeman, Jordan, and Van der Merwe. I forgot to mention the Kiwis. Fergus Burke being the newest one. He's played New Zealand under 20s. He's another one that, when the news came out, he was picked for Scotland. It made the news here in New Zealand. Some of the comments were shaking their fist at Scotland for pinching our player, but then a lot of the comments were just like, well, we didn't cap him. So good on him for representing another country. So, yeah, 23 of the 37 players for Scotland have gone through the Scottish system. So that is the makeup of the squads. Every time I do this video about the Six Nations, people bring up New Zealand. The New Zealand numbers are down, and Paul does articles for the Rugby Championship as well. If I remember rightly, New Zealand had 2 at the last Rugby Championship who weren't homegrown. That was Sevu Reece and one of the props who grew up in Australia. Was it Tyrell Lomax? But yeah, I think we're a bigger exporter of players than an importer. But those are the Six Nations squads for 2025. As I said, I think this is a aspect of the game which countries need to manage as best they can. Some countries don't really import players at all. South Africa, Argentina, Georgia, Chile, and Uruguay all seem to produce largely pretty much homegrown talent. Other countries cast the net a bit wider. Sometimes it just depends on your local systems, but obviously investing at grassroots level for mine is generally a key moving forward, but you've got to do the best you can with the resources available. You guys let us know your thoughts. As I mentioned, Paul's article's down in the description with certainly more info than I have been able to go over here. You guys let us know your thoughts, and let's look forward to the Six Nations. Take care. Talk to you again soon. See you later.